Hi guys, my name is Jess. Welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime. Today I have a very exciting video for you. I am going to be sharing my top 15 reads of 2020 and I'm so excited to be sharing all of my favorite books with you. I had such a good reading year in 2020, my best year ever. I read the most books I've ever read in a single year and the year is not quite over. I hope I'm going to squeeze in a few more before the end of the year, but I am filming this a little bit early. It's stressing me out because I am so afraid that I am going to read something between now and the end of the year that I'm going to want on this list. I am in the middle of The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abigail, and I'm like low-key afraid that I will want this book on my top 15, but I will be talking more about it, or I might have already talked more about it in my Goodreads video, so check out that to hear my thoughts on this one. But before we jump in, I do want you guys to comment down below any guesses that you have of what might be on this list. If you can guess my top 3, like that would be really cool. I feel like I'm pretty like transparent, so I feel like you guys will know all the books that are going to be on this list, but I don't know, maybe there will be some surprises. So I am going to go in like a rough kind of order from 15 all the way up to my #1 book of the year. My top 3 is pretty solid, but everything else could be kind of argued up or down, but this will be generally in order. So number 15 on my list is Rock by 𝗬𝗪 Sunday. This is a male-male romance following these two characters who end up becoming stepbrothers, and they kind of have a little bit of a forbidden romance going on. It is a little bit taboo, but it's a lot of fun. It's really beautifully written, and it just made me feel all the feels. It made me cry. I just thought it was so cute. It made me feel so soft and warm, and I just really loved this book so much. It might not be for everybody, but it definitely was for me. I read this as a part of my video where I read Chandler Ainsley's favorite books, so thank you Chandler for recommending me this gem because it has made it all the way to the top 15 of the year for me out of like the 185 books that I've read, so I think that's pretty good. I loved this one. Definitely would check it out if it sounds interesting to you. And next on my list is Clap When You Land by 𝗬𝗏𝗻 Azevedo. This is a really powerful moving story written in verse. It is about two sisters who were unaware of each other until their father tragically dies in a plane crash, and once this event happens, they come together and start to form a relationship with each other, start to grieve their father. This book is about family and sisterhood, and I actually read this one for a reading vlog this year as well. It was featured in my reading vlog where I read 5 books with female-female or sapphic relationships of some sort, so if you want to hear in-depth thoughts, definitely go check that video out. But I really loved this book. It was so powerful and moving. I cried. 𝗬𝗏𝗻 Azevedo is just such a talented writer. It's incredible that she can pack so much character growth and plot and emotion into so few words, as this book is written in verse. So this book's just really powerful. I definitely would recommend picking it up if you somehow haven't already. I absolutely loved this one and it definitely deserves a spot in my top 15. The next book on my list is In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park. This is actually a nonfiction book, the only nonfiction book that managed to crack my top 15, but this is Yeonmi Park's autobiographical story of her escape from North Korea. It is very powerful and very moving, just really fascinating. We spend a chunk of time with her in the beginning in North Korea, so we learn how the country operates and the things Yeonmi went through while she was there, and then the process of escape. In order to escape, she was actually sold into sex trafficking in China, and so even once she left North Korea, her journey wasn't over. She still had a lot to overcome. This is just a really powerful story. Yeonmi Park is also a very talented writer. I think she conveyed her story very well. It was just very well told and very well put together and just really powerful and moving and such an interesting story to read. I definitely would recommend getting your hands on this one as well. I think this is a pretty like accessible nonfiction. Also, it definitely is written like a story. It's fast-paced and just very encapsulating, and I am so glad I read it this year. I absolutely loved it. I respect the heck out of Yeonmi. She also has a YouTube channel if you're interested in checking it out. I will link that down below. She is a very inspiring woman and I just love her and I loved this book so much. Next on my list is a book that I read relatively recently, and that is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This is a YA paranormal male-male romance. There's a lot of stuff going on in this book. So it follows our main character who lives in a traditional Latinx family where the men in his family like ghost raisers. They can like talk to ghosts and raise ghosts and all of that kind of cool stuff. And then the women in his family are brujas, which means like witches, I think. They have like healing powers. Yadriel is transgender, which is difficult for his traditional family to accept, and they also don't want him to become brujo with the rest of his male family members, even though he believes that he has the ability to do so. so he goes off and he tries to complete the ceremony to become a brujo himself. Goes a little bit wrong. He actually ends up raising this boy named Julian from the dead, and Julian was like the bad boy in his school, and even though Julian is a ghost, Yadriel spends time with him, begins to fall in love with him as he's trying to figure out how to send him back, release his spirit. There also is a mystery aspect to this book because we're trying to figure out how Julian died and also how Yadriel's cousin died. So there is a lot going on in this book, but that just means there is more to love. There's so much great representation in this. Latinx representation, transgender representation. There's a male-male romance. I believe Yadriel's cousin is bisexual. So there's a lot of great diversity in this story, which I really loved. I also really loved the cultural elements. It just made the story really feel very rich and full. The magic system itself is also really cool and really intricate and well done. The romance is so cute. I really loved Yadriel and his cousin Maritza and Julian. All the characters are so well done and so cute and precious, and I just really love this book. I find myself thinking about it a lot. It was definitely one of the best YAs I read this year, and I absolutely loved it. Number 11 on my list is The Miseducation of Cameron Post, which is actually another YA story and also one that I read in my vlog where I read sapphic romances. This one isn't necessarily a romance, but it is kind of like a coming of age story. We're following our main character Cameron Post as she kind of comes to terms with her sexuality. We follow her throughout a number of years. In the beginning of the book though, she is like 11 or 12 while she is hanging out with one of her close girlfriends and kissing her and maybe figuring out that she likes girls. Her parents pass away in a car accident at that time, and Cameron is both extremely devastated but also a little bit relieved because she will never have to come out to her parents. But then she is sent to live with her very conservative aunt and grandmother, and once they find out that Cameron is attracted to other girls, they send her away to a conversion therapy camp, which is obviously a very traumatic event in Cameron's life. And so this book is just really a character study, like I mentioned, into Cameron. It's not like super plot heavy, it's kind of long, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so well done. Reading this book, you just come to know Cameron so deeply and feel like you understand her and her struggles. I think it's a really good representation too of what actually happens at conversion therapy camps. The lighting is better over here, so I'm going to switch, sorry. Even with all of these negative, traumatic things that happen in Cameron's life, this story is ultimately a hopeful one, especially the ending. This book just has a lot of good things to say and is a great resource if you're looking to surround yourself with more diverse stories. I really would recommend this one. It was beautifully, beautifully done. When I first read this next one, I wasn't sure that it was going to end up on this list. I did really enjoy it, but I find the farther away I get from it, the more I like it, the more I think about it, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I was honestly shocked by how much I loved this one. So this basically follows a magical social worker in this world where there is magic, but magic is kind of discriminated against. Magical creatures are thought of to be a little bit lesser than normal people, and so this magical social worker, his job is to go to these orphanages where they keep magical children and make sure they're safe and that the kids are thriving there, but really the government is more interested in controlling them than they are in keeping them safe, and our main character comes to learn that when he goes to inspect this one particular orphanage where they keep like high-risk magical children. He goes there for a month to do a study on them, but he finds that they really become his family. He really feels a great connection to them. The best way I can describe this book is that it's just like hopeful. Like this book reminds you that there's good in the world, that there's good people in the world, that there's a place for you in the world, and that there are people out there who will love you and support you. So that's what's just so great about this book. I feel like this is just exactly what 2020 needed, was this book to remind us that like life can be beautiful and life can be amazing. So that was my absolute favorite part of this book. The characters too are just so well done. And TJ Klune, I've heard, does the found family trope excellently, which I can vouch for in this book for sure. So good, so adorable, and it definitely, the more I reflect on it, is one of my favorite books that I read this year by far. Next on my list is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. We are now getting into the absolute nitty-gritty. All the rest of the books are full 5 stars, and this is no exception. I kind of thought I would have put it higher on my list, but upon further reflection, I think there are some books that I liked better than this one, but don't get me wrong, I absolutely did love this one. So this is an adult literary fiction. The main thread holding everything together is that we were following a hostage situation. This bank robber takes these people hostage at an apartment showing, and then we do a deep dive into the lives of each of these individual characters who are stuck in this hostage situation. We learn their backstories and how they are all interconnected. Fredrik Backman just has an extremely profound way with words. I just really love his writing. writing style and how it's kind of like tangential and cut in with little vignettes. Like, this isn't a thriller, but it reads like a thriller because just the way that Fredrik Backman chooses to reveal information along the way just keeps you like flipping the page and almost feels cliffhangery, but in like a really good way, like in a I need to keep reading this book to find out what happens way. Just the way he explores human nature and how everybody's not all good or not all bad, just very profound, and it feels so genuine and real. Tabbed it up, it made me cry, and it definitely is one of the best books I read this year. Number 8 on my list is The Death of Vivek Oji by 𝗂𝗂𝗡 𝗦𝘂. This is a story set in Nigeria, and in the very beginning, our main character Vivek, their mother finds them dead on her doorstep, and we kind of work backwards to figure out what happened to Vivek and why. This story is also kind of told in a non-linear format in vignettes, which I really tend to like, especially in my literary fiction. The writing in this book is absolutely stunning. There were quite a few times when I had to stop and highlight a passage because I just thought it was literally incredible. And while my description of it kind of made it sound like it's a murder mystery, and it is in a way, but it's not at the same time. This story is actually really an exploration of gender. Vivek is, I would probably say, gender nonconforming, and we find out through this novel how that affected their life in Nigeria, how that affected their relationships with others, and how that ultimately led to Vivek's death. This is a very, very powerful, moving story. It made me sob. I definitely would be careful with this one, be in like a good headspace, you know, but I love him sad and I love him gay, so I loved this one. Number 7 on my list is oh my god, the lighting. I don't know how to fix it. The next one on my list is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is a YA murder mystery following our main character, Pip. She has this school project that she has to do, and she decides that she wants to study this murder case that happened in her town a couple years ago. This girl that she went to high school with was killed, and they all think that her boyfriend did it, but Pip believes that it was not the boyfriend and it was actually somebody else, and that the killer is still out there. I really couldn't tell you why I loved this book so much, but I just did. I was obsessed with it. I thought it was so well done, so well written. I loved Pip as a main character. The mystery was so thrilling and enthralling and interesting. I just needed to keep flipping the pages. This audiobook is also really, really good, but the book is also cool because it's multimedia, has maps and text messages and all that kind of stuff. So this was just a really fun, quick, fast read. Honestly, one of the best thrillers that I read this year. Like, I don't know why I liked it so much, but I just really did. I thought it was really good and really fun, and I just could not put it on this list, even this high. Like, I just was obsessed with this book and I loved it so much. Next on my list is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. We read this book with the Page Turner Book Club back in June or July, I believe, on my channel. I will link that if you want to hear our in-depth discussion and thoughts on this book. I really loved this story. This is an adult literary fiction following these two main characters who they are twins, and both sisters are so light-skinned that they can pass as white, and one sister decides to do so. She runs away from home when she is like 16 or 17 and decides to live her life as white, while the other sister kind of goes the exact opposite way. She marries the darkest man she can find and has a child with him, and then she ends up moving back to her hometown to care for her mother, and then later on both of them have a daughter, and those daughters meet and their lives then intertwine from there, and the sisters come back into contact and everything just kind of spirals. This is a really powerful and unique story. I think that's a theme. I keep calling every book powerful, but this one really is too. And it's multi-perspective. We keep switching it back and forth between the sisters. So I think why I liked this book so much, it was, one, very beautifully written. I loved the writing. It kind of is written non-linearly as well, and also like dual perspective, so we switch back and forth between the sisters, but the writing itself is just beautiful and engaging. Characters were really well done. They seemed so real, and I just loved how this was a story about family and the choices we make, racism and colorism. I think it was a book with a lot of profound and moving things to say, and I just really loved this story and thought it was one of the most beautiful books that I read this year. Okay, now here we are in the top 5, finally. So number 5 on my list is Beartown by Fredrik Backman. This is a story that takes place in this hockey town in Sweden, and in this town, hockey is like the biggest thing there is, and there is this competition coming up where if the youth teams win the championship, this town will be granted money to to build a new hockey arena, and it will really be like a good economic investment for the town and everything. A lot is riding on this, but then the star hockey player sexually assaults a girl who is the daughter of one of the coaches on the board at the hockey arena, and the whole town just kind of explodes over this. Everybody is taking sides and pointing fingers, and it's really just very traumatic and disastrous, and it just poses the question of like how we treat women and girls victims of sexual assault and how we just so easily excuse the perpetrators. I will warn you, this definitely was a very anxiety-inducing read. It was very difficult for me to read personally, and I imagine that it's very difficult for a lot of people to read, especially women, but if you think you can handle it, it definitely is an amazing story. Don't know that I would say that the reading experience of this is necessarily enjoyable, but the payoff is worth it in the end, and just is really a beautiful story. And Frederick Backman, just his mind is incredible. Like the way he writes is just on a different level than everybody else, so I really loved this book a lot, and it definitely is one of my favorites of the year. Next on this list is probably not a surprise to anybody if you know me, and that is The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James by Ashley Herring Blake. I read this book back in January, so I've been talking about it on my channel pretty much the whole time I've had it. So I absolutely love this book. This is actually a middle grade book, only middle grade to make the list, and it's pretty high. This follows our main character, Sunny St. James, and at the very beginning of the book, she gets a heart transplant. Yeah, a heart transplant. Previous to this surgery, she had a lot of trouble like doing things that normal girls would do. So once she gets the surgery and recovers, she really wants to start like living a more out there life. She makes this list of things she wants to do, like go swimming in the ocean and meet a new friend and have her first kiss. And so she sets off to accomplish those things, and she finds out along the way that once she meets her best friend that she might actually want to kiss her best friend, and thus she might actually like girls. It's like a coming of age story, a finding yourself story, but it is very emotional because there's also elements of like found family in it, because Sunny has been raised by her mother's best friend. Her mother's not really in her life, but then later on her mother does come back into her life, and she kind of has to reconcile the fact that her mother has this new family and has kind of moved on, and it's like, why didn't she want Sunny? But now she does. Like, how does she reconcile that? And then how does her relationship with the woman who raised her change? So there's a lot going on in this story, but I think there's just like more to love, and this story just makes me so emotional. I absolutely love this so much, and it's going to be an all-time favorite for sure. All right, now we're to the top 3. I'm very interested if anybody will guess these correctly. Probably Haley, but my number 3 is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This is an adult office place romance book, and it follows our 2 main characters. They both work at the same office in this publishing company, and it's after a merger, so they both came from 2 separate companies who did things 2 separate ways. Our main character, Lucy, is like kind of quirky and laid back and fun, and while Josh is very like straight-laced, do things by the book kind of person, and they hate each other. They play all these games against each other to like get under one another's skin, but the sexual tension at the same time is real, and so eventually they figure out they might not hate each other as much as they thought, and that they might actually be in love. I ate this up. This is the best romance I've ever read in my life. Like, I loved this book so much. It was so good. It was funny, and I also loved it a lot because it didn't do, well, it did kind of do the third act fight thing, but not to the extent that like other romance books do, because I feel like a lot of times they do that third act miscommunication, and then it's like you don't want them to get back together because one did something so heinous that it was like ridiculous. Not in this book. This book, I liked both characters the whole way through. Even when they would like fight or have like little tiffs, I would like understand where each was coming from, and so it wasn't as bad. I don't know what I'm saying, but I absolutely loved this book. It was so fast-paced and fun to get through, and so swoony and cute, and now I just know that I love like sick fic, like Josh bringing her soup and like cuddling with her when she was sick. Can I have a Josh, please? So my number 2 book of the year is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I read this book when I read Haley's favorite books, and I'm so glad I did because I loved this book so much. It's insane. So this book is an adult mystery thriller, and in it we are following our 2 main characters who are sisters. At the beginning of the novel, Claire, her husband is murdered right in front of her, and she's like, what the heck? So she calls in her sister sister who she's been estranged from, but they start to figure out that maybe Claire didn't even know her husband at all, and that he was actually involved in this weird sex trafficking, like snuff porn film making scheme. And they're trying to figure out like if he just owned this or if he was involved, if it had something to do with his death. And also they recognize one of the girls on the tape as somebody from town that went missing recently. Claire and her sister also had a third sister that went missing back when they were all younger, and so they don't know if that's somehow connected to this as well. There's a lot of moving pieces in this book, which I think is what makes it such a great thriller. I was on my toes the entire time, surprised at every turn. Like I just couldn't even like process a guess because there was so much going on that I just was surprised on every page. I feel like this was such a good mystery thriller. Like this is exactly what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a thriller. I loved this book so freaking much, and I cannot wait to read more from Karen Slaughter in the future. Thank you, Haley, for recommending this to me. And then finally, my #1 book of the year is, drumroll, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. So going into this book, I thought I was gonna hate it. I don't really know why. I think in the beginning of the year, I, for some reason, thought I didn't like literary fiction. My mom also hated this book, so I thought I was also gonna hate it, but I freaking loved it. So this is an adult literary fiction. It follows our main character who was abandoned as a child, and so she kind of grew up raising herself. She lives in the marshes in this little house, and so they call her the Marsh Girl, but she is definitely ostracized by the community, thought of as lesser than, but she just kind of makes her own way in the world. So we follow her during childhood, but then there's also another timeline going on that's like present day, where a murder has just happened. This man in town has been murdered, and everybody just blames Marsh Girl because they feel like she's the easiest target. And so we also are following the storyline in the present timeline where she is being tried for this man's murder. And this book is just so good. I find myself thinking about it all the time. It definitely is a slower paced story, but I read it in a single day, so I didn't have an issue with that. But I can possibly see why people might find it slow, but even if I didn't, I don't think I would have found it slow. Like I really loved the writing so much, especially it was so atmospheric. This book takes place in the marshland of the Carolinas. Just the descriptions that Delia Owens uses are immaculate. I just really felt like I was there in the Carolinas. The amount of research this author put into this story was just incredible. Knowing all of the plants and the animal species that lived in that area, just the landscape felt very familiar, and that was honestly probably my favorite aspect of this book other than the ending. The ending of this book is literally incredible. That is why I got 5 stars for me, because of the ending. I have never read a better ending to a book in my life. It was so good. I'm telling you, it was so good. Please, everybody read this book. I'm so obsessed with this book. I loved it. And those are the top 15 books that I read in 2020. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite book that you read in 2020 was. I would love to know. Also, if you have managed to make it all the way through this video, comment the party popper emoji, because I think I'm posting this on the 1st of January and it's the new year. Thank God we're not in 2020 anymore, folks. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you being here. All relevant links will be in the description down below. Definitely go check them out. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!